Okay, new Sons of the Forest video. 5 things that we need to know from the devs. Let's check it out. No wasting time.
With the long-awaited sequel to 2014's The Forest peering at us through the trees, you're likely wondering what's new in Sons of the Forest. So we got the developers from Endnight Games to share some juicy details about the upcoming survival horror. From complex AI systems to new dynamic building, here are 5 things that you need to know about Sons of the Forest. Sons of the Forest can be played with up to 7 of your friends, but even if you're a solo player, you're never alone. Say hello to Kelvin, the first AI companion.
In the forest, you played multiplayer, you had people to help you out. We wanted to make sure that, or add to this game a feature where like if you were playing by yourself, you still have that benefit and you still have this experience of you're living in a world where other people are involved and playing with you. So we've added a character, Kelvin, who he's not super able to do super complex things, but he can do like a lot of very helpful things. So stuff that the player might just want him to go off and do some busy work for a while and then come back and all of a sudden you've got this pile of logs to help you out building while you're sitting there focusing on designing your mansion, on the lake.
You have to treat him nice.
He isn't any faster than another player. So if you played with someone else, like he would be a bonus. Like if you had another human player, they would be obviously faster and probably more capable, of course. But he's designed so he's not OP. Like we don't want him like, oh, get me meds, and then all of a sudden you just don't have to worry about fighting like that risk. We want to make sure that the game's still a challenge, but he can kind of help you take it off the edge some of the things that you might not find as interesting, or maybe you just want to focus on something and have this other thing happening while you're doing that.
Yeah, it's just nice to have a little companion around and sit by the fire with.
He can
I
be
agree.
moral support too, right? He can carry around music while you're building. Like, honestly, that was the first use we used him for, at least not me personally, when we're doing a lot of building tests. Give him a radio and he'll follow you around and you're building away and he's just like happily holding the radio while you're.
That's super cool because I remember in the first one when you could have the radio, but you'd have to set up the radio on a tree or on a stump or nearby, and then you'd start chopping down trees, and then you'd get far enough away from the radio. You have to go back, grab the radio, move it along. So that's cool. That's a nice little bonus. Hey, real quick, just wanted to pop in and say thank you all for the support and the love. We just made it over 20 subscribers. We're super excited. I was just talking to my kids about it, and we really, really appreciate all the love and support. If you are enjoying this video and you want to help support the channel, subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell so you can get notified when the next video comes out. We just dropped the first episode in a new survival series based in the game Scum. If you haven't heard about it, Scum is an awesome game as well. That video will be tagged at the end of this video. But any Hoosers, I'll get out of your hair. Let's get back to the content.
Building, so can be
Portable music player.
Yeah.
It appears
Portable
that Kelvin is everything that you might want in a companion. But if you're really determined to have the ultimate solo survival experience, there's a cruel way to disable Kelvin.
If you really want, you can shoot him.
Yeah, he's gone. There's no respawning.
But Kelvin isn't the only AI companion you can meet in Sons of the Forest, with others such as the 3-armed mutant Virginia appearing over time.
So yeah, there's other characters in the world who aren't the typical enemy types, and they'll help you or maybe give you some information about the game or the story and help you lead you through the world of the forest, or Sons of the Forest.
Along with a variety of weather conditions, the world of Sons of the Forest will now rotate through different seasons, going from a vibrant and bountiful summer into a cold and barren winter.
Look at that
and
snow.
everything in between.
I'm going to back up here for just a second. Look at this right here.
Different seasons, going from a vibrant and bountiful summer
they're walking
into
through
a
the
cold
snow?
and barren winter, and everything.
Back a little bit further.
Along
go
with a
into the
variety
snow.
of weather conditions, the
Oh,
world of
man.
Sons of the Forest will now
That looks
rotate
so
through
good.
different seasons, going from a vibrant and bountiful summer into a cold and barren winter, and everything in between.
Yeah, the seasons will dynamically change through the duration of the game. We also do things during the seasons that affect the actual gameplay. So a good example is, say, in winter, the berry bushes no longer have nearly as many berries, or any in most cases. There's fewer animals, and the habitats on the island, they will not pursue out as far. And so the seasons, they all
took
has
off.
this effect in the overall world of how you need to adapt to survive.
Yeah, like your water sources freeze over, and then you've got to work out where you're going to go from now. No more fish. Maybe you're
That's
relying
super
on
cool.
that resource. The main benefit is you'll have probably less encounters, the inhabitants of the island, because of like they're also dealing with the same struggles as you with winter. So
That's awesome. So even the AI, all the enemies are trying to survive during the winter, and you have to survive during the winter, and you have to go navigate around and trying to stay warm, find more food. I like that the water freezes too. That's super cool. The bushes don't provide as much fruit. I think that's that in addition to just like not just the weather, changing. It's colder, it's hotter, but the elements and then the AI reacting to that.
it's safer for you to venture out, but you will need to venture out further, maybe because you have to go get more stuff somewhere else. Hopefully it's a balance, and it's a good challenge that people experience.
The duration of seasons will be customizable, and the developers at Endnight Games are still working on finding that sweet spot for the transitions. But what we do know is that it will take progressive steps, with the player slowly seeing the new seasons as they arrive, giving ample time to prepare.
Yeah, it won't happen instantly. It won't be like just an instant switch. There'll be sort of a progression in it initially, so you'll see and you'll know what's coming. Like the forest, I expect most players will probably experience it the first time and just a bit surprised by it, and then that's something they learn about themselves, like how they survive that, and either they don't and start again, or they keep going and see where they end up.
I wonder how long the seasons will last for. How much game time will each season be?
Fans of the Forest will remember the floating ghost builds of the first game, and the gamified experience of loading resources into this blue, translucent design as you build your predetermined object. In Sons of the Forest, Endnight Games, in a quest for immersion, have now ditched the training wheels, providing a realistic and impressive depiction of wilderness carpentry, offering freedom to build in any way that you choose.
You're holding these logs because you're really strong. So, and you're actually
You're really
placing
strong.
them down. If you need, you split them with your axe, right? It's just rather than just everything popping into place. And
Yeah, or a magic ghost showing up and you throwing logs into space and it appears a mile over. It's like you're putting the log down on the ground in the spot it goes. You're building the thing, yeah. I mean, it's crazy more detailed. Like we've put a ton of work into like all the rendering and the detail of the actual like modeling and everything and the texturing. Also the interaction with it is way more detailed now, like all the pushing and how it renders with rain and wind. It's all like super detailed. And then also, of course, tree chopping is like been upgraded a ton. So now it feels really satisfying. It's really quite visceral as you do it. You want to make it really feel like someone's chopping into this tree and splinters flying everywhere.
Man, that looks
With a new
so good.
emphasis on player freedom and expression, it's hard to imagine all the possibilities of this new immersive building system. So we asked the developers to share what they've seen so far and a hint of what's possible.
I think the one thing recently I think I saw was it was basically like a massive compound that had a courtyard and like a run around the perimeter of the defensive walls, and we had little towers on the corners. And again, like this building system is like totally new and built from scratch, and it's super rewarding. Like that, it's not from something we created, it's something he created. Like he can do whatever he wants, and it's like pretty amazing.
As with any game with this kind of building freedom though, you'll never really see the full capabilities of the system until it's in the hands of the players and their imaginations.
I mean, it's going to be nuts. Like the first game, looking at some of the stuff they're able to build with that system is crazy. But then this one, we've sort of said, okay, how can we make that even more possible? So it's less, prefab structures. You actually you design the building you're building. So the way they're going to be able to bend it to create shapes is going to be quite impressive, I think. And I feel like that's going to be a massive amount of interest in the game, is just like, what can we build potentially with this system?
The forest, with all its secret locations and cave networks, was a beast to explore. But Sons of the Forest not only promises more variety, but it's significantly larger.
the island itself is about 4 times the size as the first game. A lot more forest to explore.
And we've added a ton of variation too, like a lot of sort of, they're not quite biomes, but sort of environmental variation. So it's not all just the same tree in the same area or across the whole map. So you have find areas that might be more of a glade, or you might have areas that are super dense, sort of more with underbrush or tropical, almost fern type stuff. And then, we have the water sources that are fairly new in this game. I mean, the previous game had water sources, but they were pretty open and pretty
that
flat.
animation was cool. that character couldn't get up. It was just crawling backwards.
And we have the water sources that are fairly new in this game.
Yeah.
I mean, the previous game had
almost
water sources
scared
that were
even.
pretty open and pretty flat and generic. But this one, we've sort of done a lot of work to make it feel like a real natural water source. The animals will hang around them, and there's rivers flowing into them, and just detailed up as much as we can. Like numbers-wise, the map is roughly 4 times the size. Surface area-wise, I think it's a lot bigger just because of how much we're actually dedicating just to terrain in that. There's obviously the subterranean areas, which there's a lot more of. As far as like plants and trees and stuff, I don't know how much more variations we have, but we have a lot more variations. Probably like 5 times as many tree types and plants and ferns and things. And again, they're all hyper detailed and quite interesting.
Ooh, right through the neck.
Yeah, I mean,
Looked like
I
anyways.
definitely think that's a big thing with Sons of the Forest is that because there's just so many assets, so many trees and vegetation now on this island and the trees are so towering over you. If you're just standing on the island somewhere, it feels like you're in a forest and you can look in one direction and be like, I wonder what's out of sight that way, and look the other way. It's overwhelming. It's awesome.
I think the total number of like just objects, sort of like trees and bushes in the previous game was roughly around 40,000, I think. In this one, it's about 2 million.
Wow.
Like the forest, Sons of the Forest is full of wildlife, cannibals, and
Dog.
monstrosities to come across. Like Kelvin and the other companions, everything from a squirrel to a hideous mutant has the ability to make their own survival decisions, and can make judgments on how they interact with the player.
Entirely, like we have a very an advanced AI system we've basically built out to try to create real living worlds, and one of the key mechanics of that is sort of an association or relationship that they can develop with you. They remember things, like things you've done, things you do, how you behave, how you interact with them, positive and negative. That interaction is actually sort of key to how you develop your relationship with them ultimately. It's hard to...
Interesting.
It seems weird to put the word relationship, but it ends up being basically a relationship. The way you act in a protective sense or in a supporting sense, like food and resources, sort of impact their feelings towards you.
It's because of this AI system that we can do those things now quite easily, where it's like, oh, well, it's raining now. So if this guy just saw his buddy get decapitated, he's going to be afraid and he's going to stumble and fall in the mud. Whereas maybe a different cannibal is a little more, higher in morale and that sort of thing. And, he's going to get furious and charge at you.
There's not just basic stats like fear and anger. There's other stats like how religious they feel, or how much leadership they have, or how dedicated they are as a follower. So there are characters in the game that are leaders essentially, and they have an idea, and then the other characters will say, well, I'm more of a follower, so I'll attach my thought to that guy's thought. So they say, well, I'm going to go do this, so let's go do that.
Yeah, and the cool thing is because this isn't all heavily scripted or anything, these things just happen around you. They may happen when you're around, or maybe they won't. The cool thing is that these things, they don't always trigger, right, which makes it feel a lot more organic as well.
It's just one of those things that once you add enough of these dynamic pieces, it's just sort of dance that happens when you start fighting a whole bunch, and you realize that they're not just running at you. Like a lot of games that we experience, the general AI mechanic is there's the player, I see the player, attack the player. If it's a long fight, they'll get tired and they'll go and try to hide to rest. It's not like they're hiding because you're beating them up, they'll hide because they're tired.
The impressive AI of all living things in Sons of the Forest doesn't just apply to how they interact with the player though.
The general mechanic where we've created with the world and the enemies is there's actually somewhat factions within the enemies, in that there's certain types and they behave differently, and some of them don't like each other. You can be in a fight in a village with a group of cannibals, and then a group of the what we call the muddies show up, and they will actually start fighting the muddies off because they don't want them in their village. And you can take the opportunity to get away if you're having a battle, or you can take the opportunity to let them kill each other off first, and then you come in and finish them up, that kind of thing. So and then the creepies, there's a balance there with the creepy enemies that are more sort of cave dwelling, and the actual villages, and there's sort of an ebb and flow of if you kill off all the villages, then you might have to deal with more creepies now, or if there's a kind of a turf war mechanic that's been sort of that will flow through the game as you're playing. And you can influence it by doing certain murderous actions, I guess.
Yeah. So you could think that, I guess in a way, you can kind of control the turf war. Because again, if you take out some of the cannibal villages, that might allow the creepies to spread a little more that way. There's also the system in that if you just go on a murderous rampage and start taking tons of cannibals out, they will start to try and prepare more against you by starting to wear more armor.
And then they might start doing some proactive, trying to remove you from their ecosystem.
Little hunting parties.
Yeah.